F. Burn spots on the commutator. Okay, this is Operation Maintenance Diesel Electric Motor Mode tm55203 chapter 18. F. Burn spots on the commutator. The burn spots on the commutator may result in locomotive power breaks and apply for the simultaneous burned edges of one or more of the communicator segments of the length of number of brushes in the brush holders may indicate winding across the connection upon the armature, and blackening of the communicator may be caused by only grease from the bearings in the commutator of the bushings, or surge for the load of current from the improper operation of the locomotive. Frozen or stuck brushes, flat spots on the commutator may result as the following: a mechanically unbalanced the armature communicator may be outrun. High or low communicated bars, driving wheels, or locomotive may be too worn to make much on one side. Flat spots on the wheels. Auxiliary generator. It is essential for the auxiliary generator, paragraph 88, be kept clean at all times. It should be blown in out of the clean the dirt and dry compressed air. Approximately every year, the installation on the communicator cap should be cleaned, and when dried and painted with the air drying installation varnish, the brush holder rings and insulators should be wiped out, and any accumulations of oil dirt should be removed. Electrical equipment must not be sprayed and cleaned with a liquid of any kind. Attempting to clean the coil and windings of liquid cleaner will destroy the protective coating, causing it to peel or crack. All that's necessary is to blow out all the dust and dirt out with the clean air periodically. This is done enough to prevent any accumulations if the deposits of the dirt are allowed to collect and sometimes be caked, making it difficult to remove a large volume of air, as it responsibly low pressure should be used and high pressure from a nozzle is used. Their danger of loosening tape and and cutting out the protective cutting of the various parts. Some parts, such as brush holders and contacts, should be wiped off clean and dry cloth in case when they are heavy deposits of the grease dirt which cannot be removed with the air of the dry cloth. Stiff brushes, soft wood, or fiber scrapes may be required. In several cases, it may be necessary to be dampened in a cloth cleaner and to remove oxidized grease or oiler. Every precaution should be taken to keep the cleaner of the communicator unsatisfactory. Brush performance may result. A cleaner should be used only when other methods will not remove the foreign matter. The creepage surface. Refer to instruction on the creepage surface as the care of the maintenance of the right generator communicators. 2. Lubrication. In some instances, the ball bearings are double shielded. The type of the end impact of the factory are lubricated. The end dock C, and which does not become fluid except for the extent of the temperature higher than they reach higher under the normal operation. Since the bearings are sealed with on both sides, they do not require additional lubrication. However, the overall bearings should be removed and replaced in the new factory pack bearings. Other types of the bearings are lubrication fittings. Brushes and brush holders. Inspection and cleaning procedures of the brush and brush holders are covered in B above. When the new brushes are installed, they shall be sanded in one at a time by placing a piece of number 00 grade sandpaper under the brush, with a sand side contacting the brush, and moving the sandpaper in the direct rotation, lifting the brush when the moving of the paper back, and keeping the paper close to the communicator to avoid rounding of the edges of the brush and push the proper brush pressure. Should it be maintained as specified under the maintenance data in paragraph 245, unequal pressure may cause an unequal current distribution of the brushes. Maintain 1/8 of an inch clearance between the bottom of each brush and holder and communicator. The brush holder assembly is arranged in such a way that the brush holders may be moved toward the communicator to loosen the check nut, and set the screw at set screw on the brush arm. The brush holder should be rigidly bolted into place with a carbon brush and shun into the range so that they arrange that they will clear the parts of the frame that are grounded potentially. Note: do not use emery cloth or emery paper for sanding in the brushes. Small motors. Alright, cleaning. Brush maintenance and armature maintenance of the communicator maintenance are the same as the generator's inspection procedures for the motors. Should follow the same procedures as outlined in generators. If trouble experienced in the motor operation, make sure the bearings are in good condition. There is no mechanical obstruction to prevent rotation. Shaft should turn freely. All bolts and nuts are tight and securely. Correct voltage is actually available to the motor terminals. Voltage drops must not be more than 10% of the rated voltage. Fuses are good connections and tightened. The brushes make contact with the communicator and do not bind with the brushes. Armature in the frame is grounded. Check with a mega ohmmeter. Armature should be close and inspected for the condition of the bands and wedges, coils, insulation, communicators, and general assembly of the armature bands and coil wedges should be tight and secure. Soldering in bands should be intact. If the solder has been thrown off, the cause should be determined, obrected, and bands replaced. The coil insulation should be free of blisters and flakes and cracked insulation varnish surfacings. Armature bearings. The following precautions should be observed to prevent the bearings failures. When removing of the sheath of the fans of the puller that does not apply for the load of the bearings, sheavers and fans must be pressed on the shaft in such a way that they force are not transmitted through the bearings. Care must be exercised in handling the auxiliary generator to prevent the pumping of the shaft, which is likely to damage the bearings. Avoid the excessive belt tensions. Bearings which have been removed from the shaft at any time should not be used again or replaced with new factory bearing pack bearings. These bearings are subjected unusually to serve the operation, and the conditions must be maintained very carefully for when lubrication installing bearings, usually particularly care to prevent the dirt from getting into the lubrication or the bearings. The lubricating assemblies are equipped with an elaborate arrangement of libriums and to prevent divert dirt from entering the bearing within the surface. The armature bearings may usually be inspected without removing the armature. To inspect the bearing with a communicator end, they remove the bearing cap nuts and the bearing cap. To inspect the pinion of the bearing, remove the pinion and the bearing seal, bearing cap. Remove the replaced bearings which show any observing wear, and bearings may become noisy and should be removed from excessive wear occurs. Controllers. J. Clean all the contacting surfaces, carefully removing all the old lubricant and accumulated dirt, lubricating the segments and wiping them off with a clean cloth or greased and proper lubricant. And only a very thin coating of lubricant should be used, and contacted tips must be riveted squarely on the drum surface. All screws and bolts, nuts, in which securely electrical connection should be kept tight and ensure good contact. If the contact surface of the cylinder segments of the figuring points become rough and pitted, they should be a smooth and fine mill file or replaced. When filing the fingertips of the preserve the counter to the tip of the filing such a manner of the contact will be along with the lobe instead of the position or point. Each finger as the controller is provided with the adjustment of the screw to compensate with the finger wear, sometimes the reversible. To obtain better wear, the tip should be bare, familiar, and segment replace the spring and the pressure with the light. Engine start contacts. If the contactor should be inspected, cleaned in accordance with the inspection worksheet, accumulation of the dust should be removed with a brush and the bearings lubricated with a drop of oil. If no case should be oil to be applied to the contact tips. Brawler coupler shunts may carry out the current with a moving contact with the contactor terminal should it be broken or badly worn. Be replaced with a new assembly. During an inspection, contactors should be operated by hand. Open the main battery switch and remove the fuses. To detect any excessive resistance to movement of the contact tips, the wires should be checked at this time. The silver contacts may become blackened in the normal operation, but this should not interfere with their efficiency. Silver oxide is a good conductor of electricity and not attempt to, should it be made to remove them such discoloration. Do not use abrasive when cleaning the contacts unless the precautions are taken to keep the metal particles away from the contact surface of moving particles. Such repair should be done within the contacts removed from the contactor. L, the relays. Periodically perform inspections required. Inspection worksheet check on the following. Contact the burns of discoloration of the contact arms. Cleaning the contacts is required. Inspection wear. Replace the contacts when worn one more eighth of an inch on each current. Current coil connections for tightness, electrical connections for tightness and electrical contact. Coil resistor for the burns discoloration adjustment should be not attempted unless detailed instructions for the type of the relay and usable are available. Some relays are seal wire to guard adjustment tampering. Check that the seal is undisturbed. M, the voltage regulators. Voltage regulators found on locomotives are two types. These are the motor operated type, the torque motor, and the relay type. And the motor regulating relaying control of the auxiliary generator output, the furnishing auxiliary power for the battery charging control, etc. Auxiliary generator voltage must be maintained constantly regardless of the engine speed. Inspection of the routine maintenance for the letter type will be similar to L above. Inspection and the cleaning of the torque motors to the type that they are follows. If dust colorization spark develops on the regulator communicator, the regulator should be cleaned as soon as possible. Throughout cleaning requires removal of the sector from the regulator. Refer to the specific instructions for proper procedures. B. Inspector sector or carbon ring assembly. Replace it if burned or broken or worn. C. Check if dash points of freedom of the movement. If the piston sticks at any point, the dash point must be removed or overhauled. D. Sector bearings should be lubricated according to the pertinent lubrication order manual. Use the oil sparingly to avoid accumulation of dust. Voltage regulators should be set to the manufacturer's specification. Check these required settings to see if the regulator is operating properly. Before making adjustments, study the appropriate instructions thoroughly to gain an understanding of the working parts. Poor regulation may be the result of dirt following dirt in dash spot, worn and dirty acculation shaft, dirty communicators and sectors, dirty in the main shaft bearings. Load regulator. Essentially, the load regulator is a vane-type automatic rheostatic in series with a main generator battery field. The communicator type of the regulator is simply in the construction, has few wearing parts, and secondly, minimum maintenance is required. Piping connections should be kept tight and to prevent oil leaks and entry of the air into the system. All intervals with the communicator should be removed from the communicator assembly as clean installation surfaces should be wiped and with a clean cloth and the dirt removed from the communicator slip ring using a canvas or Cronus cloth. Do not use sandpaper or cleaning solvent. Clean diagonal slots in a slip ring. Brushes should be moved freely in the brush holder. Release the spring and the raise of the holder of the brushes of the carbon ways to remove any of the dirt from the accumulated. Wipe off any of the dirt on the exposed sides of the brushes. In the face of the brushes is grooved or embedded with the copper. If the new brushes are applied, if they should be sanded to fit the communicator slip ring, the resistor assembly should be blown out with clean, dry, compressed air at the low pressure. Oil lines to operating cylinder, motors, and shafts should be inspected. Replace the seal if there is any leakage. Load regulator timing is accomplished by controlling of the flow of oil through a pilot valve into from the load regulator. The rate of motion of the load regulator is controlled to secure the satisfactory locomotive starting. To improve the transition, loading, and unloading characteristics to permit the stable operation under all load conditions. Magnet valves. Inspection of the valve operation, valve wear, and limited amount of the cleaning of the valve parts may be done. With valve unit assembly and if valve sticks or leaks, it may be due to deposit of gummy oil, dirty, and seating surfaces on a valve stem. Satisfactory operation possibly with the restored washing of the parts with the cleaning of the valve seats and the clearance holes of the valve stems may be flushed out with pouring cleaner fluid through a magnetic core. The cleaner recommended is a trichloroethylene 3 or petroleum spirits. Take necessary precautions against the hazards involved with using either cleaner. It may be necessary to grind in the valve and seat and make them tight. Make sure that all grinding compound is removed with a dry and compressed air through washing the cleaner. At intervals, depending on the number of the operations and the amount of the foreign matter in the air system, the valves Make sure all grinding composed and remove the dry compressed air through the washing of the cleaner at intervals depending on the number of operations, the amount of foreign matter. The air system valve should be removed from the manifold, disassembled sufficiently, permitting cleaning and checking the replacement of the valve parts to disassemble the magnet valve. First remover of the cover of the pole plate, it may be lifted off and the valves and stem pulled, taking off the large at the bottom allows the removal of the needle valve with the spring. Dirt may be removed and flushing with the air cleaner of the such mineral spirits. If a magnet valve with the leaks in the seats of the scored, if necessary to grind the valves, finding the grinding for the compound is used when replacing they are made with the completeness. New assembly should be installed with an order to be sure that the volume has been correct length with the relationship with the pole plate position, if necessary to grind the seats and remove the parts as stated. Above, to grind the upper seat of the coat of the end of the valve. The seat with the grind compound replaces the valve stem of the magnet valve housing. Insert a screwdriver into the slot, adjusting the screw on the valve stem. Rotate the back and the forth, and to grind the lower seat, and insert the needle valve after the coating and the valve grinding compound. Leave the valve stem in the magnet valve housing to act as a guide for the need valve. Then insert a screwdriver into the slot of the rotating back and forth after both the upper and lower seats have been grounded. The magnet valve housing valve system, the needle should be thoroughly cleaned. Make certain that there are no particles in the foreign matter in the housing. Reassemble the magnet valve, connecting it to 90 psi air pressure. To test the lower valve seat, to cover the air ports at the side of the magnet valve housing in the soapy water. If bubbles form from the lower seat of the may be regrounded. To test the upper valve seat, press down on the bottom of the cover of the magnet valve house. This has the same effect as though magnet coiling were energized. While the holding of the button down, again cover over the air ports with soapy water. If the bubbles appear, upper seat must be regrounded. If the bubbles do not appear while making the above test, both the seats fit properly. If a considerable grinding, either the seat is still leak or the valve seat is damaged at the needle valve. Stem sheet assembly are necessary. Check both the needle valve and the valve stem damage. If the valve blows from the exhaust port when the coil is energized, it is indicated that the valve stem is not seating properly. This may be due to any of the one following causes listed on the order of the probability of occurrence. A dirty valve. Dirt on the valve seat. A weak battery or low voltage applied with the coil will sometimes be sufficient to pull unseated the lower valve, but not enough to close the exhaust. Dirt under the pole plate. Valve stem worn down so that the pole plate strikes the core battery valve seats. This rarely occurs, often occurs until after the equipment has been serviced and for the service of years. If the stem is found to be short, it can be slightly stretched by peening the shank. However, it is recommended that a new assembly is installed. P. The reverser. The reverser should be removed from dismantling, cleaning, lubrication, repairs, and piston packing should be renewed. Pinions and racks expanding the wear and the magnet valves cleaned and the tested. Contacting the segments should be renewed and built up. Machine and stationary contact shunts and springs should be inspected for overheating of the wear and replaced with the necessary contact tensions should be checked and adjusted with interlocking inspection. Main power switches. Main power switches should be inspected for the free movement of all moving parts and checked for the excessive play of the clearance. Replace any moving parts where worn sufficiently, causing excessive play. Inspecting for the burning and pitting of the contact tips. Dress in medium and fine metal fill. If necessary, inspect the correct alignment. Wiping action where pressures of all contacts. When the main contact is properly closed, the contact tips are healed. Inspect the tightness of all electrical connections of the contactor mount. And do not lubricate the main contact tips, grease, or oil. Any of the type of iron around the contactor will contact the dirt, and which causes the deterioration of alignment, or deterioration in insulation. Inspect the interlocking fingers of the bars, wars, and sharp edges, burrs, alignment, and burn in the pit areas. Contain magnet valves as in O above. Instruments. Voltmeters, ammeters, load indicators should be removed in testing collaboration. This applies also to the engine and locomotive speed indicators. Other mechanical electrical systems. S. Summary. These are many types of the electrical equipment installed with the diesel electrical locomotive. One of these can be inspected and serviced in the same manner as the similar items discussed in the foregoing paragraphs. References should be also made to the appropriate publications for any of the special procedures for the particular pieces of electrical equipment. T. Safety precautions. Do not work on electrical equipment without first isolating the equipment from the power source, stopping the engine from the opening of the control battery switches, or removing the fuses where applicable. Do not perform work while wearing rings or wristwatches. Remove them. When traction motors are under locomotive equipment, must be inspected while the engine running. The generator field switches must be open, and independent air brakes and handbrakes set, but the reverser lever must be removed from the controller and carried out with the person making such an inspection. Do not use a metallical case. Flashpoints around electrical equipment. Adjustments it must be made with the equipment while actually operating should be done with this person making adjustments standing on the dry installation material, newspaper, etc. One hand in his pocket, another person shall be standing with the rendering its assistance if necessary. Never use volatile cleaning solvent in closed spaces. Never use them anywhere without adequate fire extinguisher apparatus at hand. 205. The battery. Proper maintenance of the battery is essential in order to obtain longer dependable battery systems and maintain them procedures that are not difficult at the battery compartment must be well ventilated and free flow of the air over the around the battery dissipates heat and prolongs battery life. Openings should be sewn and to keep out of the dirt. Suitable drawing opinions should be provided in the bottom of the battery compartment to allow wet washing solution or rinse water to the drain away from the locomotive, not mar the paint of the superstructure. The battery should be well blocked to prevent the excessive movement of the do not wedge. Cables should not be subjected to crushing or rubbing, which may destroy insulation, resulting in grounds. Keeping all connections and clean and tight and maintain the battery in health and state of the charge. Keeping the voltage regulator properly adjusted. Ideal settings will maintain the specific gravity of the electrical light without using an excessive amount of water. Heating up the battery too high, the setting increase the water consumption of the heat. Too low setting will result in a progressive low specific gravity readings and negligible water consumption. D. Add an improvable distilled and water at regular intervals in cold weather. Add just the water just before the locomotive goes into the service in order to mix it with the electrolyte. If left standing without mixing, the battery will freeze and damage the battery. Keep the battery and surroundings clean. Dry venting plugs must be kept in place. If covers, trays, and are neutralized into the soda, do not allow any of the solution to get it to the cells, or cells will be neutralized. Keep continuous records on the condition of the battery, the spending of specific lower of the discharge of the rise. Again, but the charge is high meter rating varies from 1,280 1,280 when charged to 160 when discharged. This probably volts. Electrical from the battery is drawn from the barrel of the syringe, which contains the hydrometer. The hydrometer will not sink as far as the solution at high specific gravity as is a solution below specific gravity. The time of the hydrometer will gradually according to the capacity of storage battery is measured in the units of ampere hours, which is productive of the electrical current, and the amperes multiplied by the time in the hours. For example, the tm55203 battery has a capacity of 6-hour rate of 204 amperes an hour. 6 hours of 34 amperes is 204 amperes. Although the current may be obtained after the end of the time, the voltage of the battery has dropped to a point which indicated a little, if any, of the permitting harm will result in the battery and discharge to the limit the capacity provided in the rechargeable promptly. The ampere bodies, which is the ampere bodies. Although the current may be obtained after the end of the battery, the voltage battery is dropped to the point of inadequate. If any of the permanent harm will result if the battery is discharged limited the capacity provided with the recharge promptly with the ampere hours, which may be obtained from the battery of our greater or lower long rate of the intermediate rate discharge, the amperes of the short higher rate. This is because the voltage drops faster the higher discharge rates. The discharge rates should not be confused with over discharge. Practice following safety rules and precautions. Do not work on the battery without opening the main battery switch. Keep all flames away from the battery. Do not lay tools on the top of the battery. Do not permit oil to drip on the battery. 206. Air system. The air system, as discussed in Chapter 12, must be kept clean, well lubricated. Faulty operations are frequently caused by wear, corrosion, and moving parts for the already sluggish, dry, and deteriorated filters, pistons, diaphragms. Many of the filter cocks and fittings are provided with the running and the maintenance of the equipment, but the high standards of the cleanliness involved with the required of the main operation as maintenance nature, such as lubrications may be done in shop after removing the assembly from the locomotive information. Paragraphs in the 197 to 209 should be used for the both maintenance and repair working according to the circumstances. Lubricating and clean testing the compressor of the components as follows. Maintain all the oil compressors and crankcases of the proper level. Change the oil periodically as specified in maintenance schedule. When oil is changed, clean out the crankcase with regular flushing oil. Do not use gasoline, kerosene, or other flammable agents in cleaning out the crankcase. If the oil pressure is abnormally high or low, check the operation of the oil relief valve, the oil pump, and the condition of the oil filters. Clean the oil elements and with the air filter periodically, direct it dry, and the compress air along with it, not against the outer surface of the air filter. Clean the alkali-free hydrocarbon solvent. Dry, dip in an oil bath and drain. Drain condensation with the inner core. Keep the inner core of the sections close and permit the free passage of the cooling air. Check the intercooling safety valve by hand to be sure that it is not stuck. If the intercooler pressure is unusually high, check the operation of high pressure suction and discharge valves. If the pressure is unusually low, check the operation of the low pressure suction and the discharge valves. About and the only attention the intercooler should need is draining to ensure the removal of the moisture drain in the intercooler, and every time the main reserve are drained, the drain cock is located at the bottom of the header at each of the banker intercooler tubes. When the holding of the intercooler care shall be exercised to avoid damage to the fine tubing and also to the undue strains that are not placed in the header assembly. The top of the header is one piece, while the bottom of the header is two pieces accumulated expansion due to the temperature change. The lower headers of the type tied together with its bottom of the type tied and strap and cap screws. Upon their removal, intercooler may be lifted and vertical when handling and replaced in the strap to prevent distortion of the assembly. 4. An orifice test should be whether a compressor can manipulate specifically reserved pressure while reserve air is escaping through the specified orifice. This pressure verifies dispensing of the orifice at the speed of the compressor. The condemning limited the usual set of approximately 80% of the capacity. The new compressor of the air escapes from the off orifice faster than the compressor can pump. The compressor should be reconditioned. The governor needs very little attention after being properly adjusted, except for the periodic cleaning of the oil. A few drops of good oil should be worked in place of the working surface, cutting in and cutting out of the valves. Exhaust openings must be free of dirt and gum, and the strainer must be clean. 207 Truck and brake rigging. The trucks are not subject to routine maintenance or other inspection. Periodical cleaning and lubrication is required for the inspection worksheet schedules. Lubrication orders badly worn wear plates on journal boxes or pedestals can be renewed without removing the wheel and the axle assemblies. A better job can be done if the assembly is removed and allowing the wear plates to be clamped tight into place. Inspect apparent damage to the main casting, such as cracks and transform in the bolster. Inspect all bolts and nuts other than fitting is for tightness. Inspect center plates inside of the bearings and excessive wears. If the clearance between the frame and the side of the bearings is low and the center plate is worn, maybe need replacing or shimming. Inspect springing as an indication of weakness, cracks, and broken leaves. Check swing hangers for excessive wear and upper and lower ends. 6. Inspect the pedestal liners. D. The brake rigging must be inspected thoroughly in each day of the inspection. Brake and lever pins, bushing, clevings, and be attained in good condition. Wear damage must be corrected immediately, and if inspection personnel are unable to correct the trouble at once, a report to the next higher authority must be made. When the levers, pin, and bushings have been worn until the brake travel can no longer be taken up or by a turnbuckle adjustment, the brake pulling rod may be shortened by removing the pin to the second hole of the rod. When it becomes necessary to move the pin to the third hole, the maintain piston travels. All parts should be replaced. Brake adjustment should be done at the time and main reserve air pressure is pumped. When braking adjustments release the handbrake, set the locomotive brakes applying to the independent brake valves. Control brake cylinders, piston travel should be set in accordance with the standard operation practices. Adjustment usually is necessary with the travel exceeding 2 inches for each piston. When adjusting the brake rigging and inspecting the under parts of the locomotive, it is always good practice to block the wheels with the locomotive to prevent any possible movements. 2.8 bearings. Hot bearings. A hot traction motor axle bearing, journal bearing, gives off smoke and an odor. It switches services, notifies the nearest maintenance facility, and road services remove the waste, discard shaft portions, repack the bearings, being sure that the way its waste against its axles, add plenty of oil, pouring some directly on the waste. After running the several miles, inspect the wear again. Repeat as required to reach the terminal. Maintain bearings. Typical axle bearing involves inspection regular intervals to check the oil depth of 3.25 inch, minimum 3.5 inch. Measuring it on a slant. Clean off the oil and dirt waste of the pocket oil well. The covers. Lift the covers. Examine the waste and change any glazed waste. Make sure that the waste is packed and tightly and against the window of the bearing. Lining of the flanges being properly lubricated using a suction pump to take out a sample oil at the bottom of the oil chamber at the track of the water. If the water is found, it should be withdrawn with the bearing repacked from the fresh waste. Bearings normally require repacking every 25,000 to 3,000 miles. 30,000 miles of service or every 6 months, whichever occurs first. Packing in axle bearings. To pack the axle bearings empty, clean out the waste of the chamber. Be careful not to drop it. No dirt drops into it. The axle caps are fitted with the spring waste and the pusher. The thin wood of the fiber wood edge may be inserted between the pusher and the axle, kept in the spring compressed while the bearing is packed. If the wedge is inserted with the center waste of the openings, the waste can be packed on both sides of the wedges. Wedges should be removed after packing. Long fiber wool waste should be used in packing. All waste should be used and be thoroughly saturated with warm oil for up to 24 hours, allowed to drain for 12 hours temporarily, approximately 85 degrees. Making several wicks and skeins, twisting a long strand together once or twice. Place a wick in with the window side of the waste chamber so that they extend the bottom of the to about 6 inches above the top of the force, then firmly against the shaft by packing them more wastely behind them. Follow the top of the wicks back over the back packing and the filling and remain space of the waste of the waste well saturated with oil and excluded dirt. Replace cover of the waste chamber oil axle bearings. The filling bearing will lubricate oil conforming to the specification applicable unless the climate is very uniform throughout the year. 2 grades of the oils are required, one for the summer and lighter grade for the winter. One open the well oil cover the gauge the depth of the oil, inserting a clean rod and stick an auxiliary oil well. If the bearing is not sufficiently full of power oil into the auxiliary oil well until the proper depth of oil is reached at 3.5 inches maximum measure on the slant close oil well cover. Journal bearings. To remove the journal bearing from the thrusting bearing. Remove the waste of the lubricator pads from the journal box. Jack the journal box high enough so that the weight of the locomotive is not resting on the journal bearing. Remove the spring caps of the basket. Remove the 9 lateral springs and the 2 snubber lateral springs. Remove 1 spring from the pin pouch of the drafting pin. The other may be removed by the hand. Note of the other snubber spring chamber is about away from the axle, and in the snubber spring is chamfered edges. Hold the thrust bearing and will remove the springs so it does not fall and mar the thrust of the face. Remove the wedge at the top of the journal bearing. Insert the bolt in the hole of the front side of the bearing, pulling it out. Be very careful not to scratch the bearing surface on collar of the axle when removing. Removing the place from the clean oil-soaked spring packaging, wasting new lubricating oil as applicable. After parts have been inspected, reassemble the reversing the above procedure. F. Journal box parts. All parts of the journal box are interchangeable when new, and this led to the practical interchangeable journal boxes from one axle to the another. Particularly at wheel changes. Experience has shown, however, that after the bearing parts have been operated together with a considerable period of time, there will be wear in a complementary individual manner. For this reason, it is recommended that each journal box is being treated as a unit, using only the journal to which it belongs, which parts which belong together are kept together. The maximum possible life will be realized at this part. 209. Miscellaneous. V-belts. V-belts. Correct tension should be maintained with the V-belt. The V-belt is too loose. If it slips, causes between the sheaves of the belt and wear to the engine to overheat. The V-belt is too tight. The bearings are subjected to very great overload and will wear rapidly. Belt tension may be checked for roughly depression of the belt. The V-belt is in the center halfway out between the 2 sheaves. The amount of this deflection varies somewhat due to the variation derived to certain center distances, but usually deflection will run 1/2 inch to 1 inch. The pressure exerted on the center of the belt check the deflection should be the normal pressure about normal pressure is possible to exert 1 finger without strain. Whenever any matched set of belts is applied, when new or used center distance of the drive must be reduced so that the belts can be placed over the sheath freely. If this was not done, it would be necessary to force the belts into sheathing grooves, causing them to break to apply breakage, cover damage, and resulting in shorter in the service life for the belts. Check pulley alignment for the after belt tension adjusted since movement of the equipment and consequently the pulley sheave movement will cause the undue wear of the strain of the new belts. After the set of the V belts have been applied and drawn up fairly tight, the drive should be run at least 15 minutes. This will allow the belts to stretch and become well seated in the grooves, equalized on both sides of the drive, checking the tension and possible mismatching of the belts. After the belts have been made, primarily check the deflection, and it should be about 1 inch to the midspan. Run the driver at the top of the speed, checking the driving pulley speed with a hand tachymeter. If the driven pulley falls in 5% of the calculated speed, the belts shall be tightened enough. If not, tighten the belt to the small amount. Check the speed again. If the driven pulley speeds are given brought into the rating, checking the wear condition of the sheaves and sheaves that are worn badly and may not deliver the proper shield. To find the speed of the driven pulley, multiply the diameter of the driven pulley into the speed of revolutions per minute divided the production of the diameter of the driven pulley. The speed of the driven pulley is 800 RPM. Diameter of the driving pulley is 18 inches. The diameter of the driving pulley is 6 inches. Required that the speed driven in the driven pulley is 18 inches by 800 RPMs plus 6 inches equals 2400 RPMs calculated speed of the driven pulley. The same formula is used on a flat belt as for the V belts using outside the diameter of the pulley. Cleaning the procedures. The first step involves the selection of the type of the cleaner best adapted for the equipment assembly. If the part is cleaned and part of the deposits to be removed, there's no one of the cleaner that will perform all cleaning operations because of the strong chemical action necessary to remove carbon and lacquer and etc. These cleaners often attack non-ferrous metals. Others have disagree of harmful fumes and some irritable skin. Some cleaners are flammable, must be used in extreme caution in making cleaner baths, making subsequent addition with any solid type cleaner. Cars should be exercised and ensure complete solution of a cleaner. This causes accomplished by adding the cleaner in small portions, different portions in the tank by the using of the fine mesh baskets hung on the side of the tanks. The action of the cleaner must be considerably accelerated. The aggregation control of the heating of the solution. Aggregation may be mechanically by bubbling air. Steam through the solution. Steam is very satisfactory, accomplishing dual operation, both heating and agitating the solution. Since the dilution will be experienced in using the stream, the concentration of the solution will require that more frequent check. Mechanical aggregation is the most effective, requires less time. Mechanically agitated tanks, which are constructed in a variety of sizes, economically handle any cleaning encountered are available. Since some cleaners decompose at high temperatures, some are not effective unless they held a determined temperature. The manufacturer recommended solution temperature must be maintained to obtain effective parts. Cleaning in the most cleaning operation of the quality work obtained is determined to a large degree by the rinsing. Operating following the cleaning of the rinsing can be accomplished spraying the part of the hot water steam jet or dipping the rinsing water tank through temperature, preventing rusting. 1 to 3 ounces of water soluble oil per gallon of the water can be added to the rinsing tank. The use of the soft grease blasting has been proven very successful. Economical is some types of the cleaning abrasive agent used in the equipment is either crushed corn cobs, hardwood, sawdust, sand. Medical abrasive blasting is not recommended. The flow of the sand can be adjusted by a nut which moves the nozzle either further into out of the sand trap. The sand control valve should be checked clean annually as conditions require. Inspecting cup washer, O-ring, composition rubber valve, replace if necessary. Inspecting sand jets, make certain that they are not plugged. Examine the vent port at the bottom of the actuating cylinder. Make certain that it is not plugged. Check the spring. Replace it with, if clean, clean all the parts thoroughly and replace all the small amount of air brake oil on the cup of the washer, O-ring, and composition rubber valve with before assembly. Section 3, painting and letter numbering.